They locked me in the garage and laughed. Not just a quick snicker. I mean a full, chesty, breathless kind of laugh, like it was the funniest thing they'd ever done. I banged on the inside of the door so hard I thought my fingers would bruise. "Come on now," I called, trying to sound calm. But calm was a long way gone. I heard Darren's voice through the crack. "We'll let you out in a bit, Marth. You need a nap anyway." Then more laughing, then footsteps, then nothing. That garage used to be part of my house. I sat on the old folding chair beside the dented dryer, blinking in the dim light. The only window was covered with a reflective sheet to keep the heat out. Darren's idea. And the tiny vent fan above the door barely moved air. In the summer, it was an oven. In the winter, a freezer. "But it's got electricity," he'd said once, as if I should be grateful. "Plenty of folks have worse." Darren isn't my son. He married Kim, my daughter. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. My daughter was sweet once. Kind. She had soft eyes and a shy voice. But that was long ago, before the move, before the refinance, before this whole mess started with paperwork. I was too trusting to question. Now she never comes. I used to live in that house. Lived there nearly 39 years. The same place where Kim took her first steps, where my husband built the bookshelves by hand, where we planted petunias every spring. Then came the stroke, then the hospital, then Kim saying, "It's just temporary, Mom. We'll handle things for now." They handled things, all right. That was 6 years ago. Now I sleep on a twin mattress next to the water heater with a cracked nightstand and a lamp that flickers when the dryer's on. My meals are left on a tray at the door like I'm in quarantine. Sometimes hot, usually cold. Cody, their son, my grandson, shouts, "Room service!" and walks off laughing. He's 17 and full of himself. Got that same smirk Darren always wears when he thinks he's being clever. The kind of look that makes your skin itch. I used to tell myself I was just old. Just in the way. That maybe this was how things were now, and I should be grateful. But last week they crossed a line. They took Lady. Lady's my terrier, 12 years old and half blind, but smart as ever. She sleeps at my feet and barks when someone's at the door. The only real company I have. I opened the garage last Tuesday, and her leash was gone. Cody said she needed a bath and he'd take her for a walk. That was 4 days ago. When I asked again, Darren said she was getting rehomed, said she deserved better. Deserved better. As if they're the ones to decide what she deserves. As if they know anything about loyalty, about showing up, about loving someone because they're yours, even when it's hard. I sat in that chair for what felt like an hour after they locked me in. No food, no phone. They'd taken my old flip phone weeks ago, said I didn't need it. "Who you gonna call, Martha?" Cody had joked. "Ghostbusters?" That's when I knew. Not thought. Not guessed. Knew. They weren't going to stop. They weren't going to wake up one day and remember who I was. Remember the hands that held them, the meals I cooked, the bills I paid when Darren's business went belly up. They weren't going to apologize. They weren't going to give the house back. And they sure as hell weren't going to give back Lady. I didn't cry. I don't do that anymore. There's no one to cry to. Just the water heater humming in the corner and the rustling of rats in the attic crawl. Instead, I made a decision. Quiet and clear. If they thought locking me away would keep me small, they were wrong. I waited until night fell. Waited until their porch light clicked off, and I heard the back door latch. Then I reached under the mattress and pulled out the tin box I'd kept hidden for years. Inside, papers, old receipts, copies of letters I'd never sent, and the spare key Cody forgot I still had. I didn't know yet what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to start. Because once you've been laughed at behind a locked door, there's really nothing left to fear. I found the paper the next morning, tucked between a tax form and a water bill, buried in the folder labeled Home Docs like it meant nothing. A quitclaim deed, signed and notarized, transferring the property to Darren for purposes of temporary estate management. Dated 4 years ago. My own shaky signature at the bottom. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember the day it happened. It must have been after the hospital, after the rehab center, when I was still in that fog. The one where nurses spoon-feed you pudding and everyone talks around you like you're not there. I remember Kim sitting at my bedside with that paper. "We just need to handle utilities while you recover," she said. "Just sign this and we'll take care of everything." She was wearing that yellow cardigan I knitted her in '94. I remember because the sleeve was unraveling. I'd reached for it, said, "I can fix that." And she gently pushed my hand away. "Just rest, Mom," she said. So I signed. I never got it back. That was the beginning. Now Darren is the legal owner, not co-owner, not temporary guardian, owner. And I, the woman who paid off the mortgage in '89, who painted the shutters every summer, who pulled weeds with her bare hands until her knuckles swelled, live in the garage. That realization didn't come with a bang. It settled in quiet, like dust. I sat at my tiny desk, really just a repurposed ironing board, and stared at the paper until my tea went cold. They didn't steal it. I gave it to them. That's the part that makes you ache. There was a knock at the door. 2 sharp taps, like always. Then Cody's voice, casual as ever. "Morning, Martha. You want toast or toast?" Laughter. "We're out of everything else." He slid a plate through the dog door Darren had installed for Lady, long before they decided she deserved better. A single slice of toast, no butter. A cup of something lukewarm. I didn't touch it. Later that afternoon, I sat on the concrete step and watched Darren hose off the Audi. He wore cargo shorts and a smug expression, whistling some old tune like he didn't have a care in the world. Cody was filming a TikTok, or whatever it is they do, mimicking Darren's stance, mocking him, and calling it bonding. "You cleaning her up for the lease swap?" Cody asked. "Lease?" I mumbled, mostly to myself. Darren looked up and grinned. "Yeah, getting something new, electric, tax break and all. You wouldn't understand." He was right. I wouldn't. I'd never leased a thing in my life. If I couldn't pay for it in cash or layaway, I didn't need it. That's how I was raised. That car, though, spotless, waxed weekly, not a scratch on her, meant everything to Darren. His little shrine on wheels, the one thing he still had pride in. I filed that away. That night, I wrote a list, not just of events, of things they took. My house, my dog. My mail, redirected for convenience. My privacy, my dignity. And then I wrote a second list. Things they forgot I still had. A brain. A memory. A name on that original deed before the swap. And a lifetime of watching men like Darren think they're untouchable. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need revenge. I needed control. I made 3 calls from the church phone line the next morning. They still remember me there. I said I was checking on a legal question, and the pastor nodded kindly, even offered me tea. First, I called the county recorder's office and requested a certified copy of the deed transfer. Then a call to the local legal aid group. Left a message. Third, to Sadie. Sadie Thompson was my best friend in high school. We hadn't talked in 5 years, but I knew she was still in the area, retired from law. Her voice was lower than I remembered, but when I said my name, she said, "Martha Brendel, I was wondering when you'd call." "I might be in a bit of a mess," I told her. "Then it's about damn time," she said. I walked home slower than usual, past the houses I used to know, new roofs, fresh paint. Someone turned the Jennings place into a VRBO. The neighborhood changed, but I hadn't. Not inside. That mattered. When I reached the driveway, Darren's car was gleaming again, parked just at the edge of the slope. He always left it in neutral, trusting the brake like a fool. I stood there a moment, staring at it. No, not yet. But soon. They took Lady because she barked when they yelled. That's what I figured out later. She never bit, never scratched, never messed the carpet. But if Darren raised his voice, or Cody got too close, she'd let out this sharp, high bark. Not out of fear, but defiance. A kind of loyalty I hadn't earned, maybe, but it was mine. The day she disappeared, I knew it wasn't just a walk gone long. I waited until sunset, then knocked on the back door, even though I hated doing that. Cody opened it with one earbud still in and a greasy pizza slice in hand. "She's not here," he said, chewing. "We gave her to a rescue. One of Marissa's friends came and picked her up." "Who's Marissa?" I asked. "None of your business," he said. "She cried when she saw how you lived. Said Lady deserved fresh air and a proper house, not this garage tomb." And then, and this I remember like a picture, he leaned against the frame and added, "She said if dogs could choose, she'd have left a long time ago." I didn't answer. I just stepped back down. I didn't cry either. Something about the tone in his voice, not cruel, just careless, made me cold. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Cold. They took her without asking. Like she was furniture. Like I was too. That night, I didn't sleep. The ceiling in the garage has a spot where the paint peels like a mouth, half open. I stared at it for hours. At 3 a.m., I got up and made tea from a leftover bag someone had tossed on my tray 2 weeks back. The water from the sink tasted metallic. My cup had a hairline crack that split deeper with every wash. I held it anyway. I don't know why I hadn't done anything sooner. Maybe because when you're pushed a little at a time, you keep adjusting. Like a frog in slow-boiling water. You think, well, it's not so bad. Until you realize you're cooked. After breakfast, if you can call plain white toast breakfast, I went to the corner store and used the payphone. Sadie had left a voicemail the night before. "Got the deed copy you mentioned. Also talked to someone I trust about elder coercion and housing fraud. You're not crazy, Mar. This isn't just wrong. It's illegal." Her voice lit something in me I thought was dead. Not hope. Something meaner. Something steady. I asked her to meet me at the library next Thursday. "Too many eyes here," I said. "I need quiet." "Quiet, you got?" she said. "But you better be ready to fight." "I'm not the one who should be worried," I told her. When I got back, Cody was sitting on the porch steps, tossing a tennis ball against the concrete. Darren was on the phone inside, pacing by the window. Cody looked up and said, "You walking now? Good for you. Maybe next week you'll start bathing more." He thought he was funny. He didn't know I kept a list. Not just of payments or documents, though I had that too, hidden in a book cover under the mattress, but of things they'd said, like little knives, the way they laughed when I burned toast, the eye rolls, the mockery. "You should be grateful. Nobody else would take you. It's not like you have friends. Kim doesn't have time for your guilt trips. I wrote them all down. I don't know why. Maybe so I could believe myself later. Maybe because gaslighting works best when you don't keep records. Later that day, I stood at the window and watched Darren back the Audi halfway down the drive, then leave it parked on a slope to rinse off the roof dust. Same as always. Brake engaged. Wheels turned inward, but only barely. I stepped outside and stood near the bushes. The angle wasn't much, but enough. If I released that brake, the car would roll, not into traffic, just through the hedge. Maybe hit the retaining wall. Nothing deadly. Just enough to make a point. I stood there a full minute and didn't do it. Not yet. Because I needed a paper trail. And people like Darren only listen to two things: fear and loss. I wasn't ready to scare him. Not yet. But loss? That I could start delivering in small doses. I went back inside and made a copy of the original deed transfer, the power of attorney letter Kim had me sign in 21, and the medical proxy from the rehab clinic. Then I called the utility companies. "Hello," I said. "This is Martha Brendel. I'd like to remove my name from the following accounts. One by one, power, gas, water. It's in my daughter's husband's name now," I told them, just making it official. The woman at the water office paused. "You understand that means they'll be fully responsible for any missed payments?" "I understand," I said. "I trust them." And I laughed. The video surfaced 3 days later. Cody thought I wouldn't find out. He'd posted it on one of those short-form sites, the ones full of pranks and reactions and people falling downstairs for likes. It was titled POV, When Your Grandma Thinks She Owns the Place, and it showed me trying to open the back door. Shaky footage, zoomed in, with Cody's snickering voice behind the camera. "Go on, Marth. You almost got it." Then Darren's voice, off to the side. "She'll give up in a second. Bet you $5. The video cuts right as I turn, defeated, back toward the garage. Over 30,000 views. The comments were worse. "LMAO old PPL are hilarious. Who let this crypt keeper out? Put her in a home already." I found out from the girl at the church thrift shop. Emma, 19, maybe 20, always wore chipped nail polish and a tired ponytail. She saw me folding blouses into the donation bin and said, "Hey, I think your grandson put something online. My sister showed me. You probably don't want to see it." But I did. I asked her to show me. And she did. We stood there for maybe a minute while I watched myself on her cracked phone screen. Old, stooped, one sock bunched around my ankle, fingers fumbling with the latch. I'd looked at myself in mirrors before, but never like that. Never through the eyes of people who didn't love me. Or worse, people who did once and stopped. "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered. I just nodded and asked if she could print the video. "Like a transcript or whatever," I said. "Just the comments and link." She did. I folded the page and put it in the envelope with the deed and the proxy. That night, I didn't eat. Not out of pride. There was nothing on the tray anyway. Cody had forgotten, or maybe Darren had. Or maybe they thought I'd earned some kind of punishment for what I said the day before. Because I'd said something, finally. That morning, when Cody made a crack about Grandma's swamp smell, I'd looked up and said, "One day, you'll be old too. And if you're lucky, someone will still bother to feed you." He laughed like I'd said a joke, but his ears turned red. I took note of that. They always give themselves away if you're watching. When the power cut out that evening, For a full minute before it flicked back, I heard Darren's voice through the walls, cursing at the fuse box. I sat in the dark, smiling. I'd done nothing. But I'd made the first move. Taken my name off their safety net. Let the boat drift a little farther from shore. I hadn't told Sadie about the video yet. That would come later. I needed her focused. We had our meeting set for Thursday, and I'd been gathering more than documents. I'd been watching. Darren's been calling his business partners from the patio more often. Loud phone calls that sound like sales but smell like desperation. Phrases like delayed funds and margin pressure pepper his sentences. He's in trouble. Maybe financial, maybe legal. I don't care which. I just listen. And Cody? Well, he started driving. Badly. He hit the curb pulling into the driveway last night and cracked the side mirror. Darren yelled at him, loud enough for me to hear every word. Cody barked back. The house is cracking from the inside. All I have to do is keep tapping. I sat down that night with my old notebook, the one I used to keep grocery lists in when Kim was still little. On the back page, I wrote one sentence. They think I'm forgotten. Then I underlined it, twice, and below it I wrote, so let them forget. Let them forget what I know, what I've kept, what I've earned. Let them forget until I remind them in full. Then I made my next call, not to Sadie. She was already helping. I called Peggy Hoffman, the woman who sold me this house in 1976. She's retired now, somewhere in Arizona, but we exchange Christmas cards. Peggy, dear, I said, do you remember if I had a right of survivorship on the deed? She was quiet for a moment, then said, I remember the shutters were green, and you paid in full before we even listed it. Let me check. 10 minutes later, she called back. Yes, honey. It was recorded under your name solely. If it was transferred, it had to be done after the refinance. And if they filed that paperwork without explanation, that's contestable. Thank you, I said. You still know your stuff. And you still have your spine, she said. Glad to see it. After the call, I sat at my desk, folded the new notes into the envelope, and added a sticky tab that read, Video link, evidence of verbal abuse. Not that I needed proof, but they were about to find out I kept everything. I found her collar behind the paint cans. It was a week after they told me Lady had been rehomed. I'd been cleaning the corner near the stacked storage bins. Not because I felt like tidying, but because my hands needed something to do besides shake. I moved the folding chairs, the crate of old Christmas lights, and there it was. Dusty, frayed, still fastened as if it had been yanked off in one pull. I crouched down slowly, knees cracking, and picked it up. The little silver tag still read Lady Brendel in my handwriting from years ago. I remembered buying it at the pet store, watching the machine stamp her name letter by letter, the young clerk offering me a smile I didn't trust. But this collar wasn't left by accident. It was discarded, hidden. They didn't give her away. They got rid of her. The garage felt too small, like the air had thickened, pressing against my chest. I sat back on the step, the collar clutched in my hand, and for the first time in months, I let myself feel it. Not grief, not fear, rage. Not the sharp kind that screams and thrashes, the slow kind. Like a fire that burns the inside of your mouth before you even taste the heat. Lady was mine. She was my last bit of softness, my alarm, my company, my reason to keep talking out loud. And they took her, not to help her, not out of compassion, but because she got in their way. Because she barked when Cody raised his hand at me. Because she stood too close when Darren made a cruel joke. Because she loved me, and they hated it. I don't know what they did with her. I don't want to imagine it. I just know this. They took her because she saw. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid the collar on the nightstand beside the tin box of documents and stared at it for hours, the moonlight catching on the tag. The house was quiet. No shouting, no footsteps. Just the occasional creak of the floorboards above me and the hum of the water heater. I remembered something my husband, Walter, used to say. Don't teach people how to treat you by staying quiet when they're cruel. Back then, I thought he meant strangers, bosses, neighbors. I didn't realize he meant family too. In the morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I walked around the house to the front porch, up the steps, and knocked on the front door. Not the back, not the garage side door. The front. I waited. Cody opened it, shirtless, phone in hand. He blinked. You get lost? I stared at him, straight in the eye. Where's the dog, Cody? He looked at me like I'd asked about the weather. I told you, we gave her to someone. Who? I don't remember. Try. He shrugged. Some lady. Friend of a friend. Why do you care? She's probably better off. I nodded once. Tell your father I'll be calling animal control, I said, to report a lost pet. They'll ask you questions. You better have real answers. His face shifted then. Not fear, not exactly, but something close to confusion, like he wasn't used to me talking like that, like I'd crossed some line he thought I didn't know existed. You're not calling anybody, he said, his voice low. I smiled. Watch me. I turned and walked back down the steps, slow and steady. My legs shook, but I didn't let it show. Not until I reached the garage and shut the door behind me. Then I exhaled, and I cried. Not long, not loud, but enough. Then I picked up the phone and called Sadie. I'm ready, I said. No more waiting. Her voice was calm. Good. Because I've got something for you. She told me she'd found the original transfer paperwork from the refinancing. A line item that noted, temporary title transfer pending medical clearance. The clause hadn't been followed. They were supposed to return the title once I'd regained legal capacity. But no one ever evaluated me again. No letters, no notices, no attorney of record. In other words, they'd taken the house on a technicality, and they'd never given it back. Can we fight it? I asked. Sadie hesitated. Yes, but we'll need evidence and time. Do you have it in you? I looked down at the collar still in my hand. I've got more in me than they ever gave me credit for. Then we begin, she said. That evening, I made a list of what I still had left. My name, my memories, one friend who knew the law, and a broken collar that reminded me why I couldn't let this go. I slipped the collar into the envelope with the documents, let them laugh, let them post videos, let them think they won. They took my dog. They won't take another damn thing. The Audi rolled slow, silent at first, like it was thinking about it. Then gravity kicked in, and the back wheels slipped forward, picking up speed as it glided down the sloped drive, tires kissing the edge of the pavement before veering left and crashing nose first into the thick hedge by the sidewalk. The sound wasn't dramatic. No glass shatter, no screaming, just a dull crunch, like a jaw locking shut. I stood at the garage window, half concealed by the curtain, heart thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat. It had taken 3 seconds. 3 seconds to reach out, just 2 fingers, and flick the handbrake out of place. Darren always left it halfway engaged, just enough to keep the car from moving on flat ground. But on a slope like ours? It didn't take much. Let me be clear, I didn't plan to damage it. I didn't touch the steering. I didn't even open the door. I just nudged a lever that wasn't fully set, then walked away. What happened next was the car's business. But still, I stayed inside. Let them find it themselves. They did. About 10 minutes later, I heard the yelling. "Jesus Christ!" Darren shouted. "What the hell?" Then the slam of the front door. Cody's voice, higher, panicked. "It's totaled, Dad." "It's not totaled. Shut up. Help me move it." The hedge had done its job. The thick, woody branches crumpled beneath the car's front bumper, tearing off the license plate and leaving deep scrapes across the hood. Nothing dangerous, but expensive, and loud enough to draw neighbors to their porches. Mrs. Langley, from across the street, peered through her blinds. Mr. Howard came out in his slippers, blinking at the mess. I stayed in the garage, sat at my desk with a cold cup of tea, and waited. At first, I thought they might come storming down, bang on the garage door, accuse me. But they didn't, because I was invisible to them. Too useless, too dumb, too weak to blame. Why bother? The car had moved, that was all. Must have been a fluke. They forgot I'd watched Darren park that Audi on the slope for years. Always the same spot. Always the same lazy half-brake. Too full of himself to think anything might ever happen. Now it had. By late afternoon, the hedge had been trimmed back. A tow truck came. Cody stood on the sidewalk in socks, filming again. But this time he wasn't laughing. The camera was lower, his face drawn. Maybe he was worried someone would ask whose fault it really was. Good. Worry is the first step toward truth. The next morning, there was no tray at the door. No toast. No coffee. Nothing. I didn't mind. I still had peanut butter crackers from the church pantry and a tin of cheap black tea. I sat by the little window and ate slowly, savoring the quiet. They were rattled. I could feel it. That same day, Sadie and I met at the library. She wore a navy blazer and brought a folder marked Exhibits. Inside, printouts of the deed, annotations from a title expert she'd hired, and copies of every letter I'd signed post-rehab. "There's enough here," she said, "to get a judge interested." "Interested doesn't mean convinced," I said. "No," she agreed. "But it's a start. If we can prove you were coerced or misled, we can get it reversed." "Will they have to move out?" She looked me dead in the eye. "If we win? Yes. The house would return to your name. Darren and Kim would have 30 days to vacate or negotiate a rental. You'd be the owner again." The words landed like stone in water. Owner again. I nodded slowly. I'd like that. But it wasn't about the house. It was about standing inside it without flinching, about choosing when to close a door, about having my dog's bowl back under my kitchen table. Sadie leaned in. "There's one more thing." She pulled out a printed still from Cody's video, the one from earlier that month. Me at the door, his mocking voice in the background. "You okay with using this as evidence of mistreatment?" I stared at it. My hunched shoulders, my faded sweater, the way I looked confused, uncertain. "Yes," I said. "I want them to see what they made me look like." Good. We left the library without saying much more. Outside, a breeze lifted the hem of my coat. I looked down the street, past the line of parked cars, and saw the tow truck again, parked at Darren's friend's house this time. Another favor being called in, I guessed. They were scrambling. Good. Let them. Let them wonder if the brake failed. Let them Google slope angles and blame the city. Let them feel, for once, like things were slipping out of their hands. Because they were. I had started, and there was no going back. I pulled the document box out from beneath the old mattress. It wasn't really a box, just one of those cheap plastic storage bins I'd bought after Walter died. Back then, I thought I'd sort things, maybe even shred what wasn't needed. But somehow, 23 years later, I still hadn't gotten around to it. The lid cracked slightly when I opened it. Inside, layers of envelopes, manila folders, old rubber bands turned brittle. The smell was musty, paper, and time. The kind of smell you can't fake. I hadn't looked in here since the year Kim got married. I took everything out, one piece at a time, laying it on the twin bed. Walter's will sat near the top. A yellowed trifold with a typewritten front page and his shaky signature at the end. It left the house to me outright. No caveats, no riders. Just, to my wife, Martha Louise Brendel, in full and permanent ownership. Below that, a folder labeled Refinance 2019. Inside, the loan agreement with Darren's name as temporary co-owner. A letter from the bank. A typed note from Kim that said, "We'll reverse this as soon as Mom's settled." I recognized the font. She'd typed it on my old desktop before they recycled it. No reversal paperwork followed. Nothing. I added it to Sadie's file stack. Next folder. House repairs, receipts, invoices, personal checks, all in my name. Roofing in 2005, plumbing in 2012, new stove in 2016. They said they paid for everything, but I had the bank copies. My name, my account. $4,872 for the bathroom redo Kim claimed was her gift. Paid in full from my checking. $6,150 for Cody's summer camp tuition. That one stopped me cold. I'd forgotten I'd covered that. He was 12. Still sweet then. He used to run down the driveway with his lunchbox swinging, shout, "Grandma, watch this," and attempt backflips on the grass. He never landed them. That boy disappeared somewhere around 15. I put the tuition check in a separate envelope marked "Support provided." Let them say I was a burden. Let them try. Another folder. Personal correspondence. Birthday cards from Walter. Old photos. A letter from Kim when she was 17, away at summer orchestra. I almost didn't open it, but I did. "Mom, I miss you so much. Please don't let me quit, even when I say I want to. You always believe in me, even when I don't. I don't tell you that enough. Love, Kay." I held the letter for a long time. Then I put it away. Memories don't excuse the present. They only explain how long you've been lying to yourself. By the time I finished sorting, my bed was covered in neat stacks. It looked like a war room, a paper army ready to be deployed. I added the photo of Lady and me, the one from 2 winters ago, both of us bundled up on the back porch, to the top of the personal history folder. She was mid-bark. I was mid-laugh. You could almost hear the sound in the picture. That day, Cody had taken the photo. He'd actually asked for a copy. "Looks kind of vintage," he'd said. He'd cropped it and put it on his wall. I remember because he'd posted it with the caption, "OG vibes." Funny, how quickly affection turns into mockery. I labeled the envelope "Timeline before and after." Then I wrote 2 dates. October 2018, the last time Kim and I had lunch, just the 2 of us. February 2019, the month Darren moved in to help during recovery. The gap between those 2 months was everything. I taped a small note to the top of the bin. "If you're reading this and I'm not around, ask Sadie Thompson. She knows where it goes." That night, I slept. Not well, but deep. the kind of sleep that comes after a long day of truth. In the morning, I took the box to the church pantry. Pastor Avery let me keep it in the admin closet. Too many eyes at home, I'd told him. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a key and said, "Keep it as long as you need." I thanked him, then sat in the pew for a while. The sanctuary was empty, save for the flickering votive candles near the front. I lit one for Lady, I lit one for Walter, and one for me. Not out of pity, but recognition. I wasn't done. When I got back to the house, Darren's car was gone. Cody's bike leaned against the porch. I walked around to the side yard where the trash bins sat and opened the lid. Inside, takeout boxes, beer cans, and, near the top, Lady's old food bowl. The blue ceramic one with the paw print. I reached in and took it. Washed it in the garden hose. Carried it back to the garage. Set it on the windowsill where the sun could hit it. A reminder, a warning, a promise. The bank smelled like paper and air conditioning, the kind of stale chill that settles in your bones even on a hot day. I hadn't been inside in years. Most things could be done online, they'd told me. But Darren had taken over the account access back when I was still recovering, saying it would be easier for everyone. I'd nodded then, too fogged from medication and guilt to argue. He'd set up auto payments, auto transfers, auto everything. Funny how easy it is to disappear from your own finances when no one expects you to notice. But I noticed now. Linda Hopper still worked the front desk. Same coral lipstick, same blue glasses on a beaded chain. "Martha Brendel," I said. Her eyes widened. "Well, I'll be. It's been too long." I smiled. "I'm here to fix that." She looked over her shoulder, then leaned in. "Is everything all right?" "Not yet," I said, "but I'm getting there." She led me to a small glass office and closed the door. The room was cold, like every corner of it wanted you to sit still and behave. I didn't. "I need a full printout of all accounts tied to my name," I said. "Savings, checking, investments. Anything Darren Brendel has touched." Her smile faltered slightly. "Do you have power of attorney assigned to him?" "I did," I said. "It expired when I stopped trusting him." She nodded and began typing. We sat in silence while the printer whirred. A few pages in, she paused and said, "There's something odd here. You're still listed as co-owner on the property trust account." My heart thudded. "Explain." She rotated the monitor. "It was set up in 2019. Name on the file says it was meant to cover property management during temporary incapacity. But there's no expiration clause. Technically, if you're no longer incapacitated, then I should have access," I finished. Linda nodded. "With proper ID and a signed affidavit, yes." I slid my driver's license across the desk. And then I smiled for real. We spent an hour going through everything. I asked her to reverse access on any auto transfers tied to Darren's name. She hesitated, but I said, "If he wants money, he can ask me, like an adult." She printed everything, 2 full folders worth. Before I left, she lowered her voice and said, "You're not the first." I looked up. "What?" "Older folks," she said. "Gets messy when family steps in to help. I've seen it too many times. But you're the first I've seen come in with this much order." "Order's all I've got left," I said. She smiled again, this time softer. I left the bank with both folders pressed against my chest like a shield. The sun was high, the sky too bright. But for once I didn't mind. I walked to the bus stop and sat on the bench, feeling more awake than I had in months. The bench plaque read, "Don't wait for better. Build it." Some local business had paid for that motto, but it fit. When I got back home, the garage felt different, not smaller, stronger. I laid the folders on the desk, beside the tin box, beside Lady's bowl, and sat down to read, page by page, number by number. I circled things in red, wrote dates in the margins, labeled notes with sticky tabs. Possible fraud, unauthorized, requires confirmation. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was auditing. I was building my case. Darren came home around 5. I heard the car slam into park, the door slam harder. Cody was already inside. Their voices filtered through the walls, low, clipped. I caught fragments. Insurance won't cover it. Why didn't you set the brake? Now's not the time to argue. I smiled, kept reading. At 7, I called Sadie. I have access to the trust account, I said, and I have proof he kept me out of it. She sounded impressed. You're ahead of schedule. I'm tired of letting other people decide my schedule. She paused, then asked, How's your strength holding up? I looked at my hands, ink-stained, dry, steady, stronger than it looks. We made a plan to meet again the next week. She'd already drafted a preliminary complaint. All we needed was a notarized affidavit and 2 more pieces of documentation, both of which I now had. The phone beeped with another call, blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, a text arrived from Kim. Hi, Mom. Just checking in. Let's talk soon. Hope everything's okay. I stared at it for a while. She hadn't written in weeks. Not since Christmas. I didn't answer. Not yet. Let her feel what silence sounds like. Let her remember who I am when I'm not being erased. Judge Elkins hadn't changed much. His shoulders were narrower now, and he walked with a cane, but the man still had the same sharp eyes that used to scan courtrooms like they were chessboards. We met at the Community Center Cafe, same place they host blood drives and Tuesday bingo. He was already sitting when I arrived, sipping black coffee and tapping his pen against a yellow notepad. Martha, he said, rising with effort. Been too long. Since Walter's funeral, I said. He nodded. You looked stronger then? I smiled faintly. I was being held up by grief and casseroles. Now it's just coffee and rage. That got a grin. Good. You'll need both. I sat down across from him, laid the folder on the table. Sadie said you'd be willing to look this over. I trust her, but you want someone meaner, he finished. Someone who's thrown people like your son-in-law out of better houses than yours. I didn't respond. Just opened the folder. He read for 10 minutes in silence. The hum of the vending machines filled the room. A group of retirees played cards near the window. Someone sneezed in the hall. When he finished, he closed the folder and adjusted his glasses. This is actionable, he said. My fingers tightened around my cup. That means something in your language, doesn't it? He leaned in. It means this is more than just a sad story. It's a provable one. Coercion, undue influence, negligent transfer of assets during temporary incapacity. Depending on the judge, we might even get punitive damages. I don't care about damages, I said. I know, he said. But sometimes the law likes to punish in money what it can't fix in blood. That shut me up for a moment. He tapped the folder. This refinance clause, the one marked temporary transfer pending capacity review, do you have any record that such a review was ever conducted? No. He nodded. Good. That's our first crack. Sadie can file a motion to rescind the transfer. If we file a supplemental affidavit with a letter from your primary doctor, showing cognitive ability, We'll have standing to argue that the original title should be restored. I already called Dr. Levin's office, I said. He agreed to write the letter. Judge Elkins raised an eyebrow. You're not wasting time. I wasted 6 years, I said. That silenced even him. We spoke for another hour. He outlined what would come next. Hearings, filings, probably resistance from Darren, maybe even from Kim. She may not side with him, I said, not fully believing it. She won't side with you, he said flatly. If she had, she'd have called you more than once a quarter. That hurt. But he wasn't wrong. Before we left, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. What's this? A template, he said. Statement of facts. Fill it out in your words. Describe what's happened. Don't be poetic. Be specific. Judges like women who bleed straight. I'll write it tonight. Good. And Martha, no halfway. If you start this, you finish it. I know. You sure? I've never been more sure. He gave me a small, almost reverent nod. Then let's make some noise. When I got home, the garage smelled like mildew. Rain had come while I was gone, and the roof leaked. I placed a pot under the drip and changed into dry socks. Darren had left a pile of junk mail by the garage door, most of it addressed to him. But one envelope was mine, from the county tax office. Inside, a notice that property taxes were overdue. 3 months behind. Penalty pending. My name was still on the correspondence list. I smiled. Added the letter to the evidence stack. They weren't just callous. They were careless. I spent the evening drafting my statement. 2 pages. Simple. Bullet points. My name is Martha Brendel. I am the widow of Walter Brendel. I have lived at 127 Marigold Lane for 39 years. In 2019, while recovering from a medical incident, my daughter and son-in-law took control of my property under the guise of temporary care. They did not return that control. They have since isolated me, restricted my access, and used my assets without consent. I am requesting full reinstatement of ownership and removal of Darren Brendel as co-owner. I signed it. Dated it. Put it in the folder. The next morning, I dropped it at Sadie's office. She opened the envelope, scanned it, then looked up. It's dry, cold, and brutal, she said. Thank you. Judge Elkins will love it. I left feeling lighter. It was coming, maybe not fast, but soon. And when it did, I'd be ready. The locksmith came at 9:12 a.m. A boy, really. Couldn't have been more than 25. He looked surprised when I opened the garage door myself, hair tucked into a scarf, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Brendel. That's me. He blinked. You want the lock changed on this garage? I nodded. Yes, just the one door. Keyed, not coded. Simple. He hesitated. I just need to check if you're the owner. I handed him a copy of the tax correspondence, my ID, and the reinstatement filing Sadie had stamped for me. He read them slowly, eyebrows rising. Okay then. Took him 15 minutes. I stood nearby, watching. When he was done, he handed me the new keys, 2 copies, smooth and silver. I took them with a small, satisfied breath. This door hadn't locked properly since 2021. Darren always said, "What's the point? No one's stealing your laundry." But it wasn't about theft. It was about dignity, about having a door you controlled, a boundary. Now I had one, and they didn't have a copy. That was the point. He left without fuss, but not before saying, "For what it's worth, ma'am, I hope you get it back." Whatever they took. I didn't ask how much he knew. Kids his age always know more than you think. I slipped one key into my cardigan pocket. The other I tucked in the bottom of the flour jar, the one with the fake label. Habit from the old days, back when hiding things was insurance, not survival. By noon, the mail arrived, and with it, the bank's notarized confirmation of access changes. Darren's name now triggered a security call. Any withdrawal above $50 required joint consent. Another lock turned. I taped the confirmation next to my old calendar. January was still up. I hadn't flipped it in months. What was the point when days felt identical? Now they didn't. Now they moved. Cody came to the garage around 4. Didn't knock, just opened the side door, or tried to. The new lock stopped him. I heard the rattle, the pause, then his voice. "What the hell?" He knocked, not politely. "Grandma?" I didn't answer, more knocking. "Martha?" Still nothing. Then he banged, fist against metal, impatient and sharp. "You changed the lock? Are you kidding me?" I opened the window, leaned out just enough. "I did." "Why?" "Because I can." His mouth opened. No words came out at first. Then he laughed, but it was the nervous kind. The kind boys use when they realize the joke's turned on them. "Dad's gonna flip." "He's welcome to knock too." I shut the window, sat down, and waited. But Darren didn't come that night. The next morning, I found a note slipped under the door. No envelope. Sloppy handwriting. "This isn't helping anyone. Let's talk. D." I folded it. Didn't answer. Let them sweat. Let them come to me now. That day, I walked to the courthouse and filed the affidavit Sadie had prepared. The clerk, a woman with chipped red nails and a headset, stamped it without looking up. "Copy?" she asked. "Yes, please." I held it all the way home like a passport. At dinner time, there was no food tray. I'd expected that. But around 7, Cody knocked again. Lighter this time. "I made grilled cheese," he said. "Want some?" I opened the door just a crack. He held out the plate like a peace offering. One sandwich, cut diagonally, crust trimmed. The same way I used to make it for him. I looked at it, then at him. "What's this for?" He shrugged. "You looked hungry." I took the plate. "Next time, don't laugh when they lock people in places." His face tightened. "I didn't mean..." "But you did," I said. "You meant every word." Until now. He didn't argue, just stood there, awkward and quiet, until I shut the door. I ate the sandwich in silence. It was cold, but not unkind. Before bed, I looked at my reflection in the cracked mirror beside the sink. Same face, same eyes. But something had shifted. They didn't have the keys anymore. Not to the garage, not to the accounts, and not to me. Kim showed up on a Tuesday. No warning, no call. Just the sharp click of heels on the walkway and a shadow through the garage window. She knocked, once, twice, not like Cody or Darren. No force, just a muted tap, like she didn't want to be heard by anyone but me. I opened the door. She looked older, not in the obvious ways. Her hair was still neat, makeup soft, blousey tucked. But there was a nervousness around her mouth, a tremble at the edge of her breath. "Hi, Mom," she said. I stepped back, didn't say a word, let her come in if she wanted. She hesitated, then crossed the threshold. Her eyes swept the garage, the bed, the desk, the water heater, lady's bowl in the window, my paperwork still stacked with tabs and flags. "This is where you sleep?" she asked. I said nothing. She turned to face me. "Why didn't you say something?" "You locked me in here." "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "We didn't..." Darren was joking. "It wasn't serious." "You left. I called." "You laughed." She looked down. It wasn't meant to be cruel, but it was. Kim sat on the folding chair without asking. That surprised me more than anything. She used to wait to be invited, even when she was 12. "I got your letter," she said. "I didn't send a letter." "Sadie did, with the legal notice. You're really doing this?" I sat across from her. "I am." She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't. We sat in silence. "I didn't mean for it to become this," she finally whispered. "We were just trying to help after the hospital. It was supposed to be temporary. It stopped being temporary when I asked for my mail and you said it was easier this way. I was tired." Darren said. I held up a hand. "I don't care what Darren said." That silenced her. "You know," I said, "I used to tell myself you'd come around. That maybe you were just overwhelmed or busy. That one day you'd remember who I was. I haven't forgotten. Then why did you stand by while he took my house?" Her lip trembled. "Why did you let them take Lady?" Her shoulders folded inward. I softened, just barely. "Do you even know where she is?" Kim shook her head. I felt something hollow crack inside me, a low, soundless fracture. "She barked when Cody yelled," I said. "That's why they got rid of her, because she was loyal." "Mom, I'm not telling you this to hurt you," I said. "I'm telling you because it's true, and because no one else will." She reached into her purse and pulled out a check. "I don't want your money. It's not a bribe. It's to help. If you're going to court—" "I'm not going to court," I said. "I'm reclaiming my name." Kim's face shifted, not with anger, not even guilt, just grief. But it came too late. She stood, slowly. "What do you want me to do?" "Tell the truth." "To who?" "To yourself first, then to the court if you're called. Tell them how it started. Tell them what you knew, and when you stopped looking away." She looked at me like she wanted to remember everything good all at once. Her wedding, the piano lessons, Sunday mornings with toast and jam. But it wasn't enough. I opened the door. She didn't move. "You don't hate me?" she asked. I shook my head. "No. I just don't protect you anymore." She walked out without another word. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the yard. Her heels clicked all the way to the gate. She didn't look back. When the light faded, I sat down at the desk and added a new sticky note to the file. "Kim knows. Did not deny. Motive, fear, convenience, avoidance." The list was getting long, but so was my strength. The filing went through on a Thursday. Sadie called that morning, voice clipped but bright. "We're on the docket. Preliminary hearing in 3 weeks. Civil Division, Judge Ames." "Ames?" I repeated. "That the one with the eyebrows?" She laughed. "Still has 'em. Still hates delays. We'll be ready." I hung up and sat there for a long while, hands flat on the desk. The silence in the garage felt different now. Not empty, but held. Like the quiet that comes before a door opens. I got up and took my one decent blouse, the navy one with pearl buttons, from the hook on the wall, brushed it off, set it aside for the hearing. Then I sharpened a pencil. Then I waited. Because I knew someone would come. They always do once it's real. He came that evening. Not Darren. Cody. He knocked once, then pushed the door open like it still belonged to him. I let him. Watched him pause at the threshold, eye the stacks of paper, the clipped documents, the marked envelope on the desk labeled, "For court." He closed the door behind him. "You really going through with it?" he asked. I didn't answer. He shifted his weight. You know it'll blow everything up, right? You'll lose us. I smiled, slow. Cody, I lost you when you started filming me through a window. That was a joke? No. A joke has timing and kindness. That was cruelty disguised as entertainment. Don't dress it up. He looked down, scuffed the floor with his shoe. You don't even care, do you? About what happens next. About what this does to Dad. Or Mom. You know what I care about? I said. Being able to close a door and know it won't open unless I say so. He swallowed hard. You're burning the whole thing down. I stood. Stepped closer. My knees ached, but I didn't let it show. You want to know what's worse than burning things down? I said. Letting someone else build a house around you with no doors. He looked at me. Finally, really looked. You used to love me, he said. I still do, I said. But that doesn't mean I'll let you keep me small. He nodded once, jaw clenched. I saw it in his face. That boy from the lawn, lunchbox swinging, trying to land a backflip. He'd never landed one. Not once. He left without another word. I locked the door behind him. Later, I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the folder one more time. The tabs, the statements, the printed photos, the note from the bank manager. The witness letters Sadie had gathered. 3 neighbors had agreed to testify. 1 had seen the tray system. Another had overheard Darren say, "She doesn't need a living room, she's half alive already." They had said it like I wouldn't remember, or write it down, or still be here when it counted. But I was, and I would be. I lit a small candle on the windowsill, one of the tea lights from the church pantry. It flickered against the glass, faint and warm. This wasn't revenge. It was restoration, not fire. Light. I sat back and let it glow. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and coffee from burnt pots. I arrived 20 minutes early. Sadie was already there, dressed in charcoal gray, her hair pulled back, legal pad in hand. She gave me a nod, not the comforting kind, but the kind soldiers give each other before stepping into a trench. You ready? She asked. I've been ready since they moved my things out without asking. She smiled. Good answer. Courtroom 2B wasn't large, just 6 rows of pew-style benches, beige walls, and a judge's bench that looked like it hadn't been polished since the Reagan years. Darren sat on the left side, next to a lawyer in an ill-fitting suit. Kim wasn't there. Cody wasn't either. They didn't have the stomach for it. Judge Ames came in on time, tall, tired, white-bearded. Didn't look at either side as he shuffled to his seat. This is case number 2843B, Brendel v. Brendel, the clerk announced. Sadie stood. Your Honor, we're here on a motion for emergency relief, reinstatement of sole ownership due to undue influence and elder coercion regarding property transfer executed in February 2019. Darren's lawyer stood too. We believe the case is meritless and emotionally driven. The property was transferred in good faith during a time of need. Ames held up a hand. I'll hear from the petitioner directly. Sadie nodded toward me. I stood, slowly. No performance, no theatrics, just truth. My name is Martha Brendel, I said. I am 74 years old. I have lived at 127 Marigold Lane for 39 years. My husband and I bought that house together. We raised our daughter there. Buried our dog in the backyard. Darren shifted in his seat. In 2019, after a medical incident, I was convinced to sign over temporary co-ownership to my son-in-law to help with refinancing. I was told it would be reversed when I was better. And was it? Judge Ames asked. No, I said. Instead, I was moved into the garage. I was denied access to mail, to money, to rooms in my own house. I was locked inside more than once. My dog was taken without consent. My belongings were discarded. I was told I should be grateful. The room was quiet. Even Darren's lawyer stopped fidgeting. Sadie handed me a document. I passed it to the clerk. "This is the original title," she said, followed by the signed affidavit from Dr. Levin, stating that Ms. Brendel regained full cognitive function in July 2019 and was never re-evaluated, as required by the refinance clause. Judge Ames read silently for a moment, then looked up. "Mr. Brendel," he said. Darren stood. His mouth moved, but his voice was thin. "Your Honor, none of that was meant to be permanent. It was temporary. She was confused, and She wasn't confused when she walked into this court," the judge said flatly. "She wasn't confused when she gathered this documentation. You'd do well not to assume that silence equals incompetence." Darren's lawyer tried to interject. The judge waved him off. "This is not a trial. This is a preliminary review. Based on what I see here, the signed medical letter, the original deed, the absence of a follow-up evaluation, and the submitted witness statements, I find the claim sufficiently credible to move forward with an evidentiary hearing." He turned to me again. "Ms. Brendel, do you wish to remain in the residence until this hearing?" "I do," I said. "Then I'm issuing a stay. No parties may alter the property, initiate eviction, or interfere with Ms. Brendel's living space in any way. Violations will be considered contempt." Darren's jaw twitched. Sadie sat back in her chair, calm as lake water. "Preliminary hearing set for 6 weeks from today," Judge Ames said. "We'll see then what kind of help this family truly provided." He banged the gavel. It was done. Not over, but begun. As I stood to leave, I glanced once at Darren. He didn't meet my eyes, just gathered his papers and muttered something to his lawyer. Sadie leaned over and whispered, "He's going to start sweating now." "I hope he does," I said. "Let him feel what it's like to live in a space you don't control." Outside, the air was hot. A dry August wind whipped the trees. The courthouse steps stretched ahead of me like something biblical. I descended slowly. Not because I was tired, but because I had every right to take my time. The house got quieter after the court order. Not peaceful, just quieter. Darren stopped slamming doors. Cody no longer blasted music late into the night. The tray stopped appearing at the garage door altogether. No one asked if I needed anything. No one offered. They knew better now. What replaced the noise was avoidance. Darren left early, came home late. Cody hovered upstairs like a trapped wasp, buzzing behind closed doors. And Kim, she showed up twice, each time with store-bought flowers and small eyes. "I didn't know it would go this far," she said the first time, standing in the doorway with a forced half-smile. "It went this far because you let it," I answered. The second time, she didn't speak much at all, just stood near the garage entrance while I folded laundry. "I remember you teaching me to iron," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the board. I didn't look up. "Then you remember how to do it yourself." She flinched, as if she'd hoped for a different version of me. Softer, maybe. More nostalgic. The kind that forgives because she's afraid of dying alone. But I'm not afraid of that anymore. I'm afraid of dying small. She left without finishing her tea. That week, Sadie sent over more documents to review. Exhibit summaries, timelines, a list of witnesses she planned to call. I read everything 3 times, made notes in the margins, highlighted inconsistencies in the refinance agreement. On the last page, I scribbled something in pencil. They taught me to shrink. I remembered how to stand. The next day, I walked out the front door. No announcement, no apology. I just opened it, like any person should be able to in her own home, and stepped onto the porch. It was afternoon. Warm, dry wind across the grass. The yard looked worse than I remembered. Hedges half dead, weeds in the cracks. I made a note to ask Pastor Avery if his youth group still did yard work. I sat on the porch swing. It creaked under my weight. A loose bolt wobbled, but it held. For 15 minutes, I just sat. A neighbor across the street waved. I waved back. Cody came out of the house halfway through, stared at me like I was some wild animal that had wandered past the fence. "You're just sitting there?" "Yes." "You're not allowed to be out here." "I am now." He didn't respond. Just stood there for a moment, then turned and went back inside. The screen door didn't slam. That was new. That night, I found Lady's old leash in the pantry closet, still hooked to a nail behind the aprons. It smelled like plastic and cedar. I held it for a while, then placed it on the kitchen counter where everyone could see it. I didn't say a word. 2 days later, I found it back in the closet, so I took it out again and left it in the hallway. The day after that, it disappeared. I didn't bother asking where it went. Let them feel watched for a change. Sadie called to check in. "They haven't violated the order, have they?" "No," I said. "They've just gone quiet. That's usually worse for them. They're trying to figure out how to pivot." "Let them." "Good," she said. "I'm submitting the second declaration next week. You'll review it?" "Of course." After we hung up, I wrote another note in the file. Silence is not peace, but it's proof they've started to lose. On Sunday, I went to church, wore my best slacks and the brooch Walter gave me in '91. No one mentioned the court case, but several people squeezed my hand a little longer than usual. Pastor Avery just nodded, slow and solemn. On the way home, I stopped by the library and picked up 3 books on property law. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I sat that afternoon in the garage, door open, breeze moving the papers, and read every word. At one point, Darren came down the hallway, saw me through the screen, and paused. "You're really going to testify?" he asked. I looked up. "Yes." "You think a judge is going to care about laundry and barking dogs?" "No," I said. "He's going to care about lies and signatures and the fact that you never once asked me if I wanted any of this." He exhaled through his nose, said nothing more. But I saw it. In the way his shoulders dropped, in the way he stood a little too long before walking away. He was hoping I'd still fold. I wouldn't. I'd waited long enough. And when the day came, I would look a judge in the eye and say, without trembling, "I remember everything." They didn't look at me when the judgment was read. Not Darren, not Cody, not even Kim. They sat in silence while the clerk read each line. Clear, clipped, final. The transfer voided, the title restored, 30 days to vacate or file for tenancy under new ownership, all tied up in the dry, precise language of justice. But I heard it. I heard every word like breath returning. Judge Ames looked at me as he closed the folder. "Ms. Brendel, you have your house back. I suggest you make good use of it." I nodded. "I will." Sadie squeezed my arm as we stood. She didn't say, "Congratulations." That would have been too small. She said, "That was righteous." Outside, the wind had shifted. You could smell autumn trying to edge in under summer. That thin first chill in the shade. I wrapped my coat tighter and walked down the courthouse steps without waiting for the others. Let them follow, or not. I didn't look back. They left without a fight. No goodbyes, no shouting. Just a moving truck that came on a Tuesday morning, 1 week into the 30-day window. I watched from the front room as they loaded boxes and bags. Kim came once, briefly, to gather photo albums and a few things from the guest room. We didn't speak. She left a note on the counter. I didn't know how to fix it. I hope this helps you feel whole again. I read it, then folded it into the kindling pile for the fireplace. Not out of spite, just necessity. Some things don't need keeping. Darren left the hedge damaged. The faucet in the back was dripping. There were scratches in the floors and a few forgotten cans of beer in the pantry. I took pictures. Then I cleaned. By myself. Every room. One by one. I opened all the windows. I pulled out every dish. I lit a candle in the kitchen and let it burn until the air no longer remembered them. That first night, I slept in my own bedroom. The same mattress. The same quilt I'd sewn with Walter in the early 2000s. Still faded. Still soft. I lay there, listening to the wind outside, and thought, this is how return feels. Not loud, just right. A week later, I walked Lady's old path around the block. No leash, of course. No paws tapping beside me. But I carried her collar in my pocket, fingers curled around the metal tag. Lady Brendel, it still read. I whispered her name once just under my breath. A neighbor waved from a porch. Glad to see you out and about, Martha. Me too, I said. After I got home, I sat on the back step with a glass of water and looked out at the yard. The weeds were stubborn, but the soil was still good. I could plant something. Maybe lilies again. Walter always said they were brave. The way they came back, even after frost. I think I understand that now. In the garage, the old folding chair still sat by the heater. I didn't throw it away. Some things you keep, not because you want to remember, but because you need to know you survived it. That you didn't disappear. That your name still means something. To you, if no one else. The house is quiet now, but not empty. It hums, low and steady, like dignity, like breath, like coming home. If you read this far, thank you. And if you've ever felt like Martha, erased, controlled, shut out of your own life, I want you to know something. It's not too late. You are not too late. You're still here. That means something. Tell someone. Start something. Light the match. And if this story meant anything to you, share it. Comment. Let others know they're not alone. We don't rise loudly. We rise steadily. And we remember everything.